So this week, what I'm going to be talking about on this LPT Live is this framework for becoming your best self. Now, this is a really useful thing to have because obviously when we're on this path of, thank you Suna for confirming that, as we're on this path of working on ourselves, working on our personal development, it really gives us a model and a framework to understand where we are, and then this really helps us to move forward. You know, you can obviously start to understand that because, you know, understanding, really having this level of self-awareness, using a framework that has a practical application of understanding where we are, can really help us to move forwards. So really, this framework is also known as the levels of consciousness. Now, there's different frameworks and maps of levels of consciousness, but what I'm going to be talking about today is a 4-level framework for the levels of consciousness. But let's talk about consciousness because it's a bit of an esoteric term. It can mean different things to different people. But if you really if you look up what consciousness means, really it is just levels of awareness. It is your awareness. So we can use this to understand where we are, and we can also look at it in the same way. There's different types of terminology, so I just want to cover this to make sure we're all on the same page. We all sort of understand what it is that I'm covering here, and really your level of consciousness or your level of awareness, because you have awareness of yourself, you have awareness of the outer world, of people, of so many different aspects. So, and you've probably probably heard this before, where people talk about, you know, their level of being awake. Oh, that person's not awake, or this person is awake, etc. Again, it's the same thing, but you can look at it also in your level of development. Your level of personal development, your level of emotional development, or your level of emotional intelligence. Because if we look at it this way, if we look at the levels of consciousness and having the lower level emotions that we all know, sort of like guilt and shame and anger and those sort of emotions, they're going to be at the lower levels. And obviously your level of emotional development or emotional intelligence is really your way of dealing with the more negative emotions of life. And this is why when we work on our personal development, working on our emotional development sort of comes hand in hand with that. And that's why that fits in with this framework for the levels of consciousness, because the more that we can deal with life and people and understanding ourselves, the better quality of life that we have, and the more that we can experience the better side of life, of joy and fulfillment, and actually doing things that, you know, others might seem difficult. I mean, you look at entrepreneurs, for example, they have to have a high level of emotional intelligence because they have to deal with lots of different problems and different, you know, putting themselves out of their comfort zone, putting themselves out there. And obviously it's not just business, but, you know, that's one I always like to refer back to. So levels of consciousness really it's a framework for understanding our level of personal growth or our level of emotional development. It's all sort of the same sort of thing. So there are different frameworks for the levels of consciousness. This is something I take my students through, and we go through this in a lot more depth, and then, you know, we can really use it and break it down into real practical application. But hopefully I'll give you enough today to really take something away. And this is what I always urge you to do, is not just you know, information gather. That's great, but always trying to watch stuff and see what can I take away from this? What can I implement? What can I use straight away? And this is my aim for you today. But the 17 levels of consciousness, this is something that was created by a guy called David Hawkins, and he created these 17 levels of consciousness. And I don't need to go into all of those today because I don't want to overwhelm you. And the framework that I have is 4 levels, and it really just summarizes these different levels. And there's other different frameworks as well, but, you know, you can go into this in a lot of depth, and really each level is really understanding the emotional state that is associated with operating at that level of consciousness. And for example, like if someone is constantly in a level of anger, that is like their default state, because we can have different states, obviously, our emotions, we can have a different level of consciousness in different areas of our life as well. And it's more to do with where our default state is. What is our default, when something goes wrong or when we're stressed? This will give us a better indication of what our level of consciousness is. And obviously, having multiple levels of consciousness, it gives us an easier way to really pinpoint where we might be operating, where our default state might be, and this is why it's good to have this. But like I said, for this live stream, I want to give you guys an overview. I want to give you something practical you can take away. So yeah, I'm just going to be covering the four levels of consciousness. So let's talk about let's just summarize what they are first. So firstly, I'll summarize what they are, and then I'll go into a bit more detail on what they are, and really give you a definition of the different levels of consciousness, of these different levels of consciousness, just so you can really understand, what level you might be at. And also, it gives us a real good framework to understand other people as well. And I just want to say, before I get into this, is that understanding these levels of consciousness and where you are, it's, don't worry about like, I'm at that level, or I'm at this level, or this person is at this level. It's not it's not an exercise on, pigeonholing people into they're at that level, or, I'm at a level, I'm better than them, or anything like that. It's not, we're not judging people on where they are. It's really important to understand that wherever we are on our level of personal growth, that everyone is at their own level, and age has nothing to do with this. We all come from different backgrounds, we have different parents, we have different experiences in life. It's not necessarily to do with age. It's to do with, our level of development, and this is down to many different factors, obviously, with our upbringing and things that I've mentioned before, and too many topics to discuss today, and also our intention to grow. But we all have these different influences, and we're all at different stages of our personal growth. All I would say is that we're using this as a framework to understand ourselves and understand other people. And yeah, we're not judging them. It just helps us to interact with people, because most people, a lot of the things that they project is because of how their level of emotional development, but the things that they're dealing with. Sometimes if someone's rude to us, it's not really actually to do with us. It's more to do with if the things that they're dealing with. You might have had this if you dealt with someone that's rude, and they don't even know you, and they're just really projecting, they're just having a bad day, etc. So it's really getting that level of compassion for other people really helps us actually raise our consciousness, because if you think about it, it's helping us raise our level of emotional development and understanding for others, for other people, and that everyone is dealing with very similar things, and everyone is dealing with some sort of problems or things that they've been through in the past, and it's really gives us an understanding of and that level of compassion for our fellow human beings. And this is really how we improve our lives, and we improve the collective of humankind, by really having this level of understanding for others. So I just wanted to cover that before I really go into these different levels of consciousness. So the first one on this 4 levels of consciousness, of awareness, is victim mode. Now, victim mode is the people who are constantly making excuses in life. They operate at a level of, they're justifying all the time, they're blaming, they're operating at this sort of, life happens to them. They're like they're living at the effects of life. They're being pushed around by life. All these different things are happening, and to those people, they don't really sort of understand that everyone is dealing. Everyone is having problems in life. It's really how we deal with them. Again, this comes down to our level of emotional intelligence, our level of development. So really, it's really that sort of victim mode of constantly complaining, constantly making excuses, justifying things, and not really taking this level of personal responsibility. And personal responsibility is something that I talk about a lot, because having a level of personal responsibility is huge for growing and with our level of personal development, because we have to understand that, you know, we are responsible for what goes on, or how we deal with life, you know, because the same thing can happen to different people, and they can deal with it in different ways, and that really comes down to how we deal with this. And again, obviously that's our emotional intelligence, but that's having a level of personal responsibility of really having this higher perspective on what happens in life. And, you know, being in this victim mode, it's constantly being pushed around by life. This happened, and really never really getting on top of where you're going. It's sort of life is happening to them. And what I would say is that anyone that is operating at that level, and don't forget that, you know, we're all human here. It's not to say that we don't dip down to some of these lower levels now and again. This, you know, we're all on a journey here. We're all trying our best to improve, and especially if you're here, you're actively looking to improve your personal development. And, you know, that's all we can really do. And sometimes, you know, we might be a bit overwhelmed. There might be a lot going on, and we might dip down to some of these lower levels, and that's really fine. But you know, as long as we have an awareness of this, we have an understanding of this, and, you know, we actively have this intention to improve ourselves, then, you know, that's all we can really do. And this is why, again, we need to be compassionate for other people, because you don't know what's happened with them, you don't know what they're dealing with, and we just have to try and be a bit understanding. So really, if someone is in this victim mode, how to get out of this victim mode and move up these levels, to the next level of consciousness, is really to give up blame and start taking personal responsibility for everything that happens in your life. This extreme ownership for everything that happens in your life. And responsibility and blame are two different things. You know, personal responsibility is understanding and having this level of acceptance of what happens in life, with its, regardless of whose fault it is, accepting the situation and looking to move forward, being proactive, thinking about how you can actually move forward, how you can deal with certain things, and not being a constant having this like victim mentality. Because let's not forget that our inner world, our thinking, creates our outer world, because our thinking is turned into our actions, and our actions are our results in life. So, you know, upgrading our mindset is obviously gonna have a massive improvement on that. So yeah, giving up blame, justification, and those sort of things, and start taking personal responsibility, and that moves us up to the next level, and that's the second level, and that's in this achiever mode. Achiever mode is, you get a lot of the business people in this mode. They're out there, they're go-getting, they're making life happen on their terms. They're not waiting for things to happen, and they're really in this I guess this sort of this hustle mode. They're living more, rather than the effect of life is happening, they're getting pushed around and they're complaining about it. They're more of like, I'm going to create this. This is going to happen for me. I'm going to go and start that business. I'm going to go and get healthy. You know, this sort of this real sort of more of a go-getting attitude, more of a positive attitude of, you know, really going after what they want in life, and they're really sort of making it happen. But there is a downside to this level. This is the second level, and there is a downside to this, because unfortunately, if you get stuck in that mentality of constantly hustling and grinding and, you know, working like, you know, 100 and odd hours a week, and you know, I might have done that a few times in the past, you know. The problem is that, you know, we see that, we obviously know that there's going to be a downside to that. There's a lack of balance in life, and you know, just constantly chasing the next thing. It's you know, if you're constantly trying to achieve something, then you're sort of missing the point of life. You know, you want this house, you want more money, you want this job, you want this relationship, whatever it is. You're constantly chasing things, and you see this a lot in the business world. And people get it, and there's very rich people who are very unhappy, and because they're chasing achievement, but really they should be chasing fulfillment. There's many fulfilled and happy people regardless of wealth and material possessions. So this level of achiever mode, it's better than being a victim. It's better, because it's actually, you're actually creating life more on your terms. You're actually making things happen. But if you get caught up in this level of achiever mode, then you get caught in this cycle, constantly chasing the next thing. What's next? And like working all long hours, and and just neglecting the other areas of your life, your relationship, of your health, and this sort of thing. And you see this again within business a lot. People will make all this sort of money, and then they have to pay someone to a divorce lawyer because they've lost their relationship, and they need to get this personal trainer to get their health back. It's this the lack of balance. So it's better than the victim mode, but it's moving in the right direction of making things happen. But again, it has to have a level of balance, and which is going to be in the next mode. So really, to move out of this, because it's sort of like they're forcing life. They're trying to bend life into their way. So really, to get out of this into the next stage is really giving up this need to try and control things, trying to force everything, and really live at more of a flow with life. Because when you chunk up to a much higher perspective of life, you realize that actually it's not against you. This is a typical mentality of the of the sort of lower levels of consciousness, of really thinking that they're a victim, that life is out to get you. And really, if you look at the grander intelligence of life, it's not. It's that is more of your perspective on things. When you chunk up to higher perspectives and you work more with the flow of life, you realize, and you're more in tune with yourself. This is again a level of doing this inner work, of tuning into yourself and really going down the direction of your purpose. And you'll realize that life actually, doors open, things happen. It's like this, what people call like this magic area of life. And you realize this, and in this achiever mode, it's like it's completely neglecting any of this and just really trying to force things. So to get out of that achiever mode, it's really having this level of giving up this need for control, and really just understanding the grander intelligence of life, living more the flow of life, and having more of this balance. And that's always going to give you more happiness, more joy, more fulfillment, because you're going to have more of the positive things of life, and not constantly chasing the next thing and hoping that that next million is going to make you happy, etc. So it's really giving up this level of control. And then by doing that, you get to the next level. This is in what I would call flow mode. You're more in, like I've touched on, you're more in this area of flow with life. You're moving with life. You're more in because this is grander, regardless of your different belief systems, etc. You must understand that there is like a higher intelligence, and I don't want to go too far down this route, because obviously there's different connotations, different labels, etc. But there is this certain intelligence with life. When you start to chunk up to higher perspectives of the way things happen, and the way that even like the physical world is set up. But I don't want to go off on a massive tangent, but really having this level of trust and flow in life. And this comes down to the fundamentals of doing the inner work, of taking personal responsibility, doing this level of inner work and personal growth. And we start to have this more of an understanding of ourselves, an understanding of other people, understanding of really how life works, perspectives, the challenges of life, looking at life and the challenges in a much different way, of rather than be like, oh, this has happened to me, again slipping into victim mode. It's more like, okay, this has happened, what can I do? I'm going to take personal responsibility. What can I learn? How can I grow from this? How is this going to make me a better person? How is this going to increase my level of emotional development? Having these higher perspectives is really more of being in the flow of life. And this is where you can tap into the achiever mode. You can go after build that business, go after the health goals, do this sort of level of making life happen, but you're not forcing it. You're going with life. You're in tune with yourself. You're in tune with what's happening. You're reading the signs, of the universe, or whatever you want to call it. You're more in tune with how things are going. And in doing this, then you're going to have this more of a level of fulfillment. You're not just chasing the next goal, chasing the next thing, and then getting there and be like, oh, is this it? Because you're more of this fundamental principle of feeling great now, of understanding that we can change our state in an instant if you have the tools and techniques to do that, and really understanding, having different perspectives on the challenges of things that happen in life, of people. This is why this is such a good framework, because we understand people. And if we understand why someone says something, rather than getting into victim mode and be like, oh, this person said this and complained about it, and then letting it ruin your day, it's like, no, you're taking personal responsibility. You're understanding that they're just projecting probably their level of pain or their frustration with life, and they probably don't understand these things. They don't have this framework. They haven't had the mentors, the teachers, to really help them and guide them on their level of personal growth in life. So it's really having this level of flow, this level of understanding, chunking up to these much higher perspectives to really live in flow with life and yourself and other people, and etc. And yeah, it doesn't mean that you're not going to think something might happen, some big event might happen and it might knock you off course, and yeah, you might drop down your level of consciousness, you might be knocked off track. And yeah, this is a process, guys. This is really just having these frameworks, these tools and techniques to really understand ourselves, understand what's happening out there, and then be like, okay, what can I do? How can I take responsibility for this? How can I move forward? How can I change my state? How can I change my situation? What do I need to do to get to where I want to go? Goals, fulfillment, joy, happiness, that relationship, that business, whatever, and start taking control, taking charge of your own life, and really living that level of flow. So so really you're sort of operating at this, you're operating at your level of your higher self, because you're more in tune with yourself. And whenever you try, this people talk about your gut, trusting your gut instinct. This is really your level of your higher self, or really your level of intuition. And you're understanding this. The more you do personal development, and the more you do this inner work, and have this level of, again, doing this inner work, it's not always easy. It's having this level of self-inquiry, of honesty, of I am here. This is where I am, and this is where I need to move forward. Not sort of deluding ourselves on pretending that we don't have any faults or anything. It's about being positive and proactive about where we are, having a level of acceptance, but also having this level of honesty. And really, by doing this, we're operating from our higher self, and we get much more in tune with our intuition. It's much easier to make decisions when you understand yourself, when you understand your values, where you understand your purpose, where you're going in life. Then when something does happen in life, you don't have this element of confusion where a lot of people at these lower levels of consciousness, they operate from. They're constantly being pulled around by life, because they haven't done this level of inner work where they really understand their intuition on a level where they know what the next decision is. It might be quite difficult. It might be moving out of their comfort zone. It might be making a difficult phone call. Whatever it is, having this level of higher understanding of ourself and our intuition really gives us a real grounded place to really start to make decisions and live at this level of this flow state.